called him the son of Zeus, the boy who would unite the world under one crown. But history remembers him by another name, Alexander the Great, the man who conquered the earth and then tried to conquer death itself. Before the legend, there was a child born in 356 BC in the kingdom of Macedon. His mother, Olympias, whispered to him that lightning had struck her womb the night he was conceived. His father, King Philip II, told him he was born not to live, but to rule. As a boy, Alexander watched his father turn a small, forgotten kingdom into a rising power. But behind the glory was betrayal, politics, and endless war. And as Philip expanded his empire, the young prince learned a darker truth, that love and loyalty were as fragile as a soldier's life on the battlefield. When Aristotle came to tutor him, he didn't just teach him philosophy. He taught him how to think like a god, to see the world as something not to inhabit, but to shape. Aristotle told him of Achilles, the hero who traded peace for immortality. And Alexander listened, believing he too was born to outlive time. At 16, he led his first army. At 20, after his father's assassination, he became king. At 22, he marched into Asia, and the world trembled. He faced the Persian Empire, the greatest superpower of the ancient world, an empire of 1,000 cities, 1,000,000 soldiers, and a god-king named Darius. But Alexander was no ordinary king. He didn't command from behind walls. He charged with his men, his eyes burning through dust and blood. At Granicus, he was almost killed. At Issus, he faced Darius himself and broke the Persian lines like thunder-splitting stone. In every battle, his tactics were not just military, they were psychological. He made his enemies see him as invincible, unstoppable, divine. He was young, radiant, and fearless, a god of war in human form. But each victory fed something inside him, something that could never be satisfied. You're watching history unsealed, where forgotten empires and untold truths rise again. Subscribe and join us as we uncover the secrets that shaped our world. Alexander marched deeper into Persia, chasing Darius across deserts and mountains. At every step, he built cities that bore his name: Alexandria in Egypt, in Syria, in Asia, each a monument to his dream of uniting East and West under his eternal reign. When he entered Egypt, he was greeted not as a conqueror, but as a god. The priests of Amun crowned him pharaoh, declaring him the son of Zeus Ammon. And for the first time, Alexander began to believe it himself. No longer was he just a Macedonian king. He was a divine being, destined to rule the world. He founded Alexandria by the Nile, a city of marble and knowledge, built to stand forever, a reflection of his own immortality. Then he turned east toward Babylon, toward India, toward the edges of the world itself. But the deeper he went, the more his army began to fear him. He stopped seeing himself as mortal and started demanding worship. His friends, his generals, men who had fought beside him for years, now had to bow to him as they would to a god. Those who refused vanished. When Darius was finally betrayed and murdered by his own men, Alexander wept not for pity, but because he had been robbed of the chance to kill a god himself. He ordered the traitors executed, declaring, "Only one king may end another." Then he took the Persian throne, dressed in royal robes, and declared himself ruler of all Asia. But it wasn't enough. It never would be. He crossed into India, into lands his maps did not name, through jungles that swallowed men, across rivers that drowned horses, against kings who fought not for power, but for honor. At the Hydaspes River, he faced King Porus, a ruler who refused to kneel. The battle raged through monsoon rain and blood. Alexander's men, exhausted and sick, watched elephants crush soldiers like insects. But when the storm cleared, Alexander had won. And for the first time, he spared his enemy. Porus had fought with such courage that Alexander made him a king once more. It was mercy, or perhaps recognition, that in another life, Porus might have been him, but his army had had enough. They refused to march farther east. For the first time, the god was told no. Alexander stood before his men, furious. But behind the fury was fear. He had conquered everything before him. And yet the horizon still stretched endless. He turned back, but the return was not victory. His empire began to fracture. Men whispered of his madness, that he saw himself as more than human. He began drinking heavily, growing paranoid, haunted by visions. He executed his closest friend, Claudius, in a drunken rage, the same Claudius who had once saved his life. And when the wine wore off, the conqueror wept like a child. In Babylon, the gods he thought he'd conquered came for him. Fever struck, a sickness that no physician could name. He lay in his palace, surrounded by silence. When his generals asked who should inherit the empire, he whispered his final words, "To the strongest." And then the god died. He was 32 years old. The empire he built, the greatest in history, collapsed within a generation. His generals tore it apart, dividing the world like scavengers over a corpse. His dream of one world, one people, one god vanished in the dust. But the myth of Alexander never died. In every age that followed, his name returned. In the echoes of emperors, in the ambition of conquerors. Napoleon, Caesar, Hitler, they all claimed his shadow. They all sought what he could not find. Immortality. What Alexander learned too late is that greatness has no end, only a cost. He conquered the world, but lost himself, and in chasing the gods, he forgot what made him human. Yet even now, 2,000 years later, when we speak of greatness, we speak his name first, because in the heart of every ruler, every dreamer, there is a piece of Alexander, the boy who looked at the horizon and saw eternity. This was when power consumed greatness. Alexander the Great's obsession with immortality, a story of ambition, glory, and the endless hunger of the human spirit. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, subscribe and join us again as we uncover the power, betrayal, and humanity behind history's greatest empires.